Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a fascinating devotional text in front of us today,
Hmm.
and its core idea is really quite powerful. That the entire life story of Jesus was predicted centuries ahead of time in these ancient biblical prophecies.
That's right. Our mission today is really to dive into this source and see what it pulls out, what it highlights regarding predictions specifically about, well, the crucifixion, resurrection, and even his ascension.
And the hook, the thing that kind of grabs you, is this claim that some of these predictions were supposedly made, what, like 1,000 years before they actually happened?
Yeah, 1,000 years. It offers a really unique lens on these pivotal events.
He really does. So let's jump in. This source kicks off with a pretty big claim. It's not just, a few scattered verses,
No, not at all.
but that the entire sweep of Jesus' life, including his death and resurrection, was prophesied in quite specific detail.
Exactly. And the source points to Jesus himself, sort of acknowledging this. It brings up Hebrews chapter 10, verse 7, quoting Jesus, saying, "Lo, I come, in the volume of the book it is written of me." And the source's take is that this is Jesus confirming his life, his purpose. It was already outlined for him in the scriptures.
Right. So the source presents him as consciously stepping into a role, a narrative already written. That's a strong starting point.
It is.
Now, how does this text connect specific prophecies to the crucifixion itself?
Well, first, it makes that general assertion we mentioned prophesied 1,000 years prior.
Right.
And it specifically highlights Psalm 22. It calls it a beautiful description of the crucifixion. Now, the source doesn't actually, break down Psalm 22 verse by verse here.
Okay, so it flags it as important
Yeah.
without going deep into the details.
Exactly. It flags it as a key prophetic text for this event.
Got it. But it does get more specific with another prophecy, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving beyond that general description, it references Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10.
Zechariah 12.10, what's the quote?
"And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced."
Pierced.
Okay.
And the source's interpretation of that is?
The insight it draws is that this specifically foretold the piercing of Jesus' hands and feet during the crucifixion. It makes a very direct, kind of focused link there.
That's a very pointed connection the source is making. Okay, so we've looked at how the text handles crucifixion prophecies. Where does it turn next? I guess naturally to the resurrection.
Yeah, exactly, the resurrection. And the primary one it focuses on there, Psalm 16, verse 10.
Which says,
"For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption." This is presented as really central to foretelling the resurrection.
okay, thou wilt not leave my soul in hell. How does the source interpret that line? Because, hell can mean different things.
Right. The source presents a very specific interpretation. It argues that when Jesus died on the cross, he actually went to hell.
To hell. Why?
Because in its view, he bore the sins of the entire world. And according to this text's understanding, any sinner who died at that time, well, they were destined for hell.
Ah, okay. So it connects his descent directly to him carrying that burden of sin.
Precisely.
And what happens then while he's there, according to the source's reading?
Well, immediately after describing his descent, the source says that in hell, he defeated the devil and the forces of darkness.
Right.
And from there, he came back triumphantly to life. So the descent isn't like the end point. It's part of the victory lap, basically, leading to the resurrection. That's the view in this text.
That's a really specific narrative it's building from that psalm. What else does it use? Is there anything else building the case for the resurrection being foretold? I think there was something about Jonah.
Yes, absolutely. It brings in the story of Jonah as a kind of powerful foreshadowing. It quotes Jonah chapter 1, verse 17.
Which is?
"And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights.
Okay, the classic Jonah story. But this isn't just the source drawing a parallel on its own, right? It highlights Jesus making the connection himself.
Exactly. That's the crucial insight here for the source. It then quotes Jesus from Matthew chapter 12, verse 40. Right. Where Jesus says, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Okay. So the source really emphasizes that Jesus himself explicitly drew this parallel. He presented Jonah's experience as a prophetic sign pointing to his own time in the heart of the earth.
So for the source, Jesus is validating the prophetic nature of Jonah's story in relation to his own death and resurrection time frame.
Precisely. It sees it as Jesus using the Old Testament that way himself.
That's quite compelling evidence for the source's argument. Okay, so we've covered prophecies, the source links to the crucifixion, the descent into hell, and the resurrection. What about the next step? His return to heaven, his exaltation.
Right, the ascension and exaltation. For that, the source primarily turns to Psalm 110, verse 1.
Psalm 110.1. Let's hear it.
It quotes, "The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool." This is presented as foretelling his future position of, ultimate authority.
Okay. And how does the source show this applies to Jesus? Does it use Jesus' own words again, like with Jonah?
It does, yes.
Yeah.
It points to that interaction in Matthew chapter 22, verses 41 to 45.
Ah, where he questions the Pharisees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jesus asks them, whose son is the Christ? And they give a standard answer, son of David.
Right.
Then Jesus throws down the challenge. How could David, writing under the inspiration of the Spirit, call his own descendant Lord, referencing that line from Psalm 110.1?
The Lord said unto my Lord.
Right. He asks, how can David's son also be his Lord? So the source uses this exchange to show Jesus applying this prophecy, sitting at God's right hand directly to himself.
Arguing his identity must be more than just David's physical son.
That's the implication drawn by the source, yeah.
Okay, so we've walked through how this source lines up different Old Testament prophecies. We had Psalm 22 and Zechariah 12 for the crucifixion, Psalm 16 and that Jonah parallel for the resurrection,
Right.
and now Psalm 110 for the exaltation.
Correct. And the consistent thread the source is pulling through all of this is that these prophecies and their fulfillment aren't just, interesting historical footnotes.
No.
They're presented as absolutely foundational.
Yeah.
Essential for understanding what Jesus himself said about his destiny, his death, his resurrection.
It's tying everything together. So the source's big conclusion, its main point, is that these fulfillments essentially authenticate the truth that he's indeed the Son of God, God in human flesh.
Exactly. It's using fulfilled prophecy as the ultimate proof, the validation.
The ultimate proof.
Precisely. And it reinforces this by citing Romans chapter 1, verse 4.
Romans 1.4.
Yeah, which states that Jesus was declared to be the Son of God with power according to the Spirit of holiness by the resurrection from the dead. So for the source, the resurrection itself, which it argues was prophesied, becomes the powerful confirmation of his identity.
Right. So for you listening, the core insight from this deep dive is really getting a handle on this specific source's perspective, how it views these ancient prophecies and their claimed fulfillment as absolutely central.
Central to establishing Jesus' identity and validating the claims made about him.
It's about seeing how this text connects the dots, across different books, different centuries of the Bible, to build this really powerful case. So, summarizing then, we've covered quite a range of prophecies, according to this source. Everything from the piercing of his body...
Yeah, the crucifixion details.
...to his time after death, that descent and subsequent victory.
Right, the resurrection aspects.
And then finally his eventual place of authority, sitting at God's right hand.
And the absolute main takeaway from this text is how it presents these predictions and their fulfillment. It's not just presenting them as signs or hints.
No, it's more definitive than that.
Much more. It presents them as definitive, almost undeniable proof of Jesus' identity as the Son of God. For this source, fulfilled prophecy is the ultimate validation mechanism.
Right, the ultimate authentication, as the source puts it.
Yeah.
Which, it leaves us with something interesting to think about, doesn't it, as you process all this?
Yeah.
This source frames understanding a central identity, Jesus' identity here, primarily through this specific lens, this framework of ancient predictions being fulfilled. So what does it mean, or maybe what are the implications, of approaching knowledge or validating really significant claims primarily through that particular framework, the framework of prophecy and fulfillment?
Yeah.
Something for you to mull on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
Something to really think about. Keep exploring it. Until next time.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.